See, the funny thing about picking a topic like subject to change, you guys probably may run into this once in a while, but as a minister, it's really apparent. You pick a topic, and then everything that happens between the time that you've chosen this topic and the time that you're about to give the talk happens. So the title subject to change left me with nothing to talk about this morning. I was thinking about that and going, oh no, I've written 5 different talks for this so far.
You're set for the rest of the month.
I am, I can go that way. But then I got thinking about it really critically, and I thought, okay, you know, we say everything can change, right? But that's not really true. There are things that are not subject to change. There are universal truths and principles that our desire to change them isn't going to change them at all. Because they're the truth. I was listening to the reading that Joe did, and I thought about that for a second. Here I was thinking, yeah, it's lovely to be a 2-year-old. You know why? Because a 2-year-old has a warm place to live, somebody to give them food, somebody to wipe their butt and change their diapers, somebody to walk them where they need to go, and somebody to keep them entertained. So it's wonderful to be free in those conditions.
And then we grow up.
And then we grow up. And we have responsibilities because we have to take care of that little 2-year-old. And have the resources to take care of that 2-year-old. And have the time and the energy and the love and the patience to take care of the little 2-year-old and watch them go, no! And say, that's okay, dear. Yeah. See, change is happening all the time. We started too. We come into this world and we have a clean soul. We have come here with the decision to experience ourselves as individual forms of human beings. That's my personal belief, you know. There's a lot of speculation about that. And that's okay too. Whatever you believe is fine. You know, you may be on the endless cycle of karmic reincarnation. That's good for you. You may be an absolute materialist and say, I'm born of chemicals. This is all a chemical reaction, and when I'm done, it's over. We've heard that. You know, whatever way that you look at how you got here in the first place, that's okay. You're here now. My personal belief is that we chose to be here to experience love in an individual form. That we appointed ourselves to be the consciousness of spirit, individualized here, to express that and to go through all of the changes in life that we go through, to experience life in its fullness before we reconnect with that unity of life that all of this is, in a greater awareness. This is one of those things that doesn't change. Nobody's getting out of this alive that we know of. If they're around, they haven't raised their hand and said, guess what? I'm 4,000 years old. You know? Yeah. Could be. But as far as we know, there's a limited time that we're here from. We get born, we pass on to whatever's next. Now, what I'd like to talk about in change is that here's this middle part, right? Where we get to explore all of this playground of life. You know, with all of its fullness, all of its joys, all of its funs, all of its stamping your foot and saying no. All of the evolution of consciousness and the awareness of our connection that happens after a certain point in life, some more quickly than others. You know, where we get to this realization that I need something more than being self-sufficient. I need something more than feeling alone and isolated all the time, but I can do this. I need to change my thinking. See, what is subject to change is our thinking. And what we get to experience is the tendency of our thinking. Not every specific thought, because think about this. When I've said this often, and I'll say it again. If every single thought that we had manifest instantly, can you imagine what this room would look like right now? Oh my goodness. Think about that sometimes, the thoughts that roll through your head. If every one of those came into being, I wouldn't want to live in that world. You know? See, we're built in as an expression of love. That's built into us. That's a universal truth. This possibility of love expressing through us is a universal truth, but it expresses through this law of principles. We talk about that in New Thought all the time. The principles, some people say, what are the principles? Okay, here's a principle. Cause, effect. That is a principle. A cause creates an effect. Okay? The law of attraction. Like attracts like. Now you put those two together, the law of cause and effect and the law of attraction, you have a really powerful tool for shifting the deck chairs around on the cruise liner, as I like to say. So what happens is we get to experience not everything that we talk about, but the tendency of our thinking. We get to experience the whole package of what we're thinking. We were talking about this yesterday in the practical prayer workshop. You know, so how do you know what your thinking is, what your belief system is, what your structure is? Look at your life. That's what you believe. Take a good, try to be objective look at your life, and that's what you believe. Because that's the tendency of your thinking, is bringing all of those experiences into your belief. So what's subject to change is the way we think about the world. And as we think about the world, we get to change the experience we're having of the world, and then the conditions conform to meet that changed thinking. Now this works whether or not we believe in God. That's the trick. Because it works for people who don't, quote, believe in God. You know? You can look all around you. People who are focused on their intentions, clear about their activities, do not accept any kind of dissolution of their thought process, and they go after what they want with all of their beings. They achieve what they want, and they may say they're not spiritual. And that's okay. See, the process works. It's not just changing our thinking that we have to do, though, to experience what it is that we want to experience. We have to change all of it. Okay, so you can't think, I'm going to be loving and peaceful and an expression of divine light. Hey, you, get off the street! This ain't going to work. This is not going to work. It's real simple. We have to not only change the thinking is where it starts. We have to change the activity that goes with the way that we behave in the world. Because you cannot be peace and love when you are angry, resentful, and hateful. They are mutually exclusive. And there are levels of that. Now, some people are filled with so much rage, for them to say a nice word is a great amount of change. Honestly, ever run across one of those people? They're just boiling over with internal anger that they've just held on to for so long that they've built it up and they radiate it. The kind of people you just want to step away and go, peace to you. I'm going to do that from over here. You know? When we really want to be love and peace, what we do is, instead of stepping away from that, is to step towards it. And be peace and love in that, and say, what is really eating you that you are so upset? Because we can all be an agent of change in somebody else's experience by being those high ideals that we talk about on Sunday morning. Where we talk about being this inherent being of love. This center of consciousness with all of the power that ever was available to us in each moment. We talk about that on Sunday morning. Those of us who are ministers talk about it on Thursday evenings and Wednesday evenings and some other evenings during the week and some weekends, and most of the time, actually. And yet, even from that place of knowing about this all the time, I do find myself falling into a negative space where I fall short of my ideal. And that can happen to all of us. We can all fall into that place where the conditions that we think are the causes of our unhappiness allow us to run away with this unbridled idea that it's their fault. So there's some good news and some bad news. The good news is that life is lived from the inside out. The bad news is that life is lived from the inside out. We're very big in New Thought about talking about authority and accountability. You are the author of your experience. All of it. Ouch. I never like that part. I want to save a few little things to be them. You know? But this is a teaching of oneness. There is no them. There's only us. Them is a separation that doesn't really exist. So when you're looking at the political debates over the next couple of weeks as the vitriolic words are flowing all over the place in this last-ditch effort to get to the presidency, remember that this too is God. That this isn't them. This is us. That without the recognition that whatever these opinions are all part of a whole, we can allow hatred and resentment and all of its lesser cousins to rule our experience and to allow us to feel separate from one another in some way, shape, or form, when we are not. We are one. There is one mind. We're all sharing it. There is one power, and we are all using it. There is one love, and we are all embodying it. Even the people you don't like. Okay? There really isn't a them. So here we have this thing that what's subject to change, okay, are our thoughts, which we have control over, believe it or not. I know they seem unruly sometimes, and I know sometimes we all get that committee going in our head that says, you're voted out of office. Or go sit in the corner, one of the two. Right? But we do have control of our thoughts. The conditions around us, which may seem uncontrollable, which may seem absolutely immobile in our efforts to change them, in fact, are already changing. So the conditions can change. But it starts with our thinking changing, and our thoughts becoming clear about what we want to be in the life, how we want to be in life, and how we want to express that, and that becoming a wholeness of our being and how we express that in the world. And then the conditions around us start to shift to align with that. Now, as I was saying before, we can do that on self-will. Or we can choose to allow that to be spirit-guided. And for us to allow that to be spirit-guided, we actually have to be open to the idea of it being spirit-guided. Which means not just saying, I'm guided by spirit. That was what happens in the physical world, right? What has to happen is we allow ourselves to be guided by spirit so that what we are doing in the world actually matches up with the guidance that we are getting. See, each one of us is using this same mind, this same infinite understanding, this allness of love to express into the world however we feel we best express that. And each one of us has a unique set of gifts and talents and ideas that are coming to us specifically to act in the world on. Now, when we follow ourselves and align ourselves with spirit, we are going to align ourselves with that allness of love, with the truth that we see, with the compassion, the love, the honesty, all of those wonderful aspects of God that we want to be in the world. And we want to receive in the world. And we want to see more of in the world. So I guess, ultimately, everything, except the principles, spirit itself, is subject to change. When we've aligned ourselves and we move into that idea of change happening, then guess what happens? and I've watched this happen in my life and in other lives around me, is when you get aligned with an idea of love, all of a sudden you get surrounded by people who are aligned with an ideal of love. And they start thinking, wow, we've got this great ideal of love, why don't we go out and do something with it? And then something happens where more people get drawn to that. And then it becomes an activity that you're doing in the world. And then more people get drawn to that. And so all of the people interacting, as it spreads that idea of love out, creates more love in the world. And that's how the world changes. And sometimes what we need to do is change our thinking enough so that we can stand up and be counted as being for love, as being for harmony, as being for peace. Because it's easy not to be. We all know that. You know, anytime you run across somebody who has an opinion that you really don't like, all you got to do is look inside and feel that feeling of that dislike and irritation coming up and recognize that that's how we can choose not to be love. Right? I mean, you guys getting this? It's all our choice. We can change the thinking that we have to express a different world out there. You want to see utopian peace and love all over the world? Stand up for peace and love and be peace and love in the world. Have everybody you encounter experience that peace and love that you are, and let them take from that and spread that outward so that everyone they encounters peace and love. And for anything that we have a challenge for in this world today, the opportunity to be the highest ideal of what the outcome could be is each one of ours. And we can choose that. We can change the world by changing our thinking. And there's a little bit of time sometimes between here and there, because we've been going at it for what? Ever. And it's changing. And sometimes it seems like it's changing in the wrong direction. And that's probably an opinion that we all have at one point or another, and I'm not going to point fingers at anybody and say that's the wrong direction, because do I really know? For me, it's the wrong direction, but there's probably a lot of people who want to go in that direction. If enough of us change our thinking to be for peace, for love, for spiritual connection and communion, for all of the good things that we would like to see in the world, the universe will respond to that by bringing more of that into being. The awareness of more of that into being. I have to correct myself. All of the love that ever was, ever will be, and is right now. There ain't gonna be more love in the world. It's all love. It's all love. It's already here. We have to become aware of it, change our thinking to recognize it, and move into that awareness of it on a daily basis, sometimes on a moment-to-moment basis. So there's some practical ways to change this, really, because life is a challenge sometimes. Life will come at us, and when it comes at us, we jump back and go, let me get defensive and fearful and attacking, or whatever your response mechanism when life is a challenge. There are some real practical techniques to do this. When you're confronted with somebody barking at you, instead of barking back, first take 3 breaths. Right? Next, you might want to ask a question instead of give an opinion. Right? But first, we need to take those 3 breaths to center ourselves and say, okay, how can I be love here? How can I express the idea here that I'm an individualized aspect of God, and so are you? Right? In those situations, if we can take those moments to separate ourselves from the immediate response of defensiveness and fear and fight or flight, or whichever one you want to pick out of that, and center ourselves in the awareness that this is all good, this is all God, and this too is for me now. Because in each one of those situations, we are there because we are supposed to be the one dealing with this. Otherwise, your consciousness wouldn't have brought it into your experience for your growth, for your awareness to expand, for the opportunity to grow into a larger expression of love and light. So I don't know where I've gone with all this. Kind of moved away from subject to change, but I told you at the beginning, that's what happens when you pick this topic. It's subject to change. The last thing I want to do is say before I close this out is to say that to be able to stop for those 3 breaths, you actually have to practice at it. It's not something that happens automatically where you just think, I'm going to stop for 3 breaths the next time somebody's yelling at me. It doesn't work that way. We actually have to prepare ourselves for that. And we prepare ourselves for that by spending the time in contemplation of love, of peace, of harmony. Spending some time in meditation and recognizing that I can turn off all of my little tracks in the head and be the love for a few moments so that you know what it feels like, so that when it doesn't feel like that, you've got some reference of where you want to get to, right? You can use prayer. And I'm a real big believer in this. In practical prayer, we are saying a prayer for a result. Sometimes the prayer is, please let me be guided by love and spirit right now. Doesn't have to be a whole lot of words to get there, and be open to it. And when we do those things, we can create more peace and love and harmony and joy and prosperity in the world today. Because everything that we require for life is right here, right now. And we're here to figure out how to use it. We're here to figure out how to create that love in the world that everybody gets to experience. We're here to be the ones who figure out how everybody can live love and peace and prosperity in their lives today. Not just some of them, but all of them. Because we are all individualized expressions of a perfect idea brought here to experience ourselves as ourselves right now. So I invite you, as you go through your week, to be subject to change. Allow your thinking to change towards a greater expression of love and a greater expression of life. I'll try. Hope you do too. Thank you.